o'clock. Okay, enough of all that. Okay, everybody's here to talk baseball, right?
Right.
All right. Johnathan Thomas is going to talk about baseball. We are fortunate to have him as a remaining friend and member of the Historical Society. He used to be the president of the Historical Society and still loves us. How about that? Thank you, Johnathan.
Well, this is great. Three things I love to talk about: Arlington, history, and baseball. So this week I've had some of the past stars of Little League Baseball reaching out. They've been emailing, they've been texting. So I've had to rewrite my presentation to get them all included. So tonight will be circled around several scrapbooks, including my own, and I'll mix in some news from the internet. I'm neither an expert on baseball nor history, so trust me, I'm no Ken Burns. But I'm one of four brothers who grew up with a passion for playing baseball in Arlington. I'm also the acting historian at Washington Golf and Country Club next door, and we'll tie it into the presentation as well. Tonight we'll cover baseball in Arlington starting in 1920, the year Arlington officially took its name. Baseball was played in the area before 1920, and it was as popular for blacks as it was for whites. But tonight's collections don't stretch that far. If you've ever tried to research Arlington, a participant has enabled closed captioning. Let me get rid of that. If you ever tried to research Arlington history, you know how difficult it can be. And the reason is because we've had so many different names for our little county. If you can see this map, the letters are small, but it provides a history of county names since 1648, starting in the lower right with Northumberland County. Follow the arrow, which shows the county name ran all the way to nearby the northern portion of Potomac River. As Virginia's population migrated north and west, new counties were created. Our area became Westmoreland County next in 1653, Stafford County third in 1664, and so on. And I just love this map and borrowed it from C.B. Rose Jr.'s book, Arlington County, Virginia, a History. I believe you can still buy this at the Historical Society Museum. And there you go, you've learned something tonight. To get started with baseball, we'll proceed in chronological order. And we're going to move fast because we have nearly 80 years of baseball history to cover. Think of it as a slideshow, and I should have you out of here by midnight. I'm sure when it's over, some will ask why I didn't mention many of the great county names in baseball, like Edsel Martz, or Tim, or Jimmy Hill, Clay Kemp, or Woody Taylor. Well, there you go. I just named them. But with what little time we have tonight, it's impossible to put them all in the starting lineup. We'll still cover a lot, so grab your glove and get ready. If time allows, we'll finish up with baseball cards of past Arlingtonians and mention some of our team sponsors back in the day. I apologize to those here in person because I have to read much of this. There's just too much information. But for the millions worldwide who are tuning in on Zoom, maybe they won't notice. Following the presentation, I'm happy to take as many questions as you have. And I need to know why this arrow isn't working. Mark Benbow is our historian and. There you go. Right, guess I was on that last one too long. So borrowing from a website called Built by the People Themselves, we learned that, and I quote, at the turn of this 19th century, baseball was such a popular sport in Arlington, in the Arlington area, because we weren't in Arlington yet, that it supported as many as 5 semi-pro teams. Like most elements of life at the time, sports and recreation were segregated. Beginning in the 1910s, Arlington's Black community formed the Black Sox baseball team, pictured here, from their home base of Peyton Field in the Knock community, formerly Green Valley. The Black Sox toured the East Coast playing other Black teams. So we know the area loved baseball, and it was popular. But what happened after Arlington became official in 1920? Let's begin with 3, not showing as well as it should there, Mark, but that's okay. Can we reduce a little bit? We'll go with it. Let's begin with 3 boring articles. This one from September 1922 is the first mention of baseball I found in what became Arlington County. The article announces the Clarendon Carnival, and officials were declaring it baseball night. Officials also expected the Washington Baseball Club, presumably the Senators, and visiting teams to attend, and Judge William Gloth seemed to be the earliest chairman of the county league. Remember his name. 2 weeks later, the Arlington Athletic Club announced there will be a baseball game at Fort Berry. This location was at the corner of South Glebe Road and Walter Reed Drive. So we now know that Arlington officially had organized county baseball. And this article from 1923 is a little ironic. My great-grandfather is mentioned taking over for the same Judge Gloth who resigned at the courthouse. The article goes on to read that Cherrydale is going to play a baseball game under the supervision of the Arlington County Public School League. We now know we have baseball in schools. This handsome lad is Epirixie in 1923. He was not from Arlington, but he made it in this presentation for 2 reasons. First, he was a great baseball player, and second, he was the nephew of Admiral Presley M. Rixey. As many of you know, Admiral Rixey once owned the land we're gathered on tonight, so it's only fair we added his nephew to the program. In 1907, the Admiral sold 74 acres to the early Washington Golf and Country Club members next door so they could reestablish their golf club, and the Admiral often brought Epa as his guest to the club. This is Goose Goslin of the 1924 Washington Senators. He was also not from Arlington. But in July of that year, an article detailed Goose and 4 other senators played golf next door. The area must have been thrilled that fall when the Senators won the World Series. Coincidentally, President Calvin Coolidge, also a club member next door, was in attendance at Game 7 of that series, which the Senators won in the 12th inning. Moving along to the first yearbook from Arlington's oldest high school, Washington Lee. The school was opened in 1925, and the first structure was designed by Frank Upman. And guess what? He was also a member of the club next door. By the way, Upman also designed the main building on Marymount's campus, which was Admiral Rixey's home. This was the 1927 W&L baseball team, and the star was George McQuinn, first row, second from the left. From the school's write-up in the 1928 yearbook, McQuinn may be considered W&L's first bona fide superstar. As you can see, he was compared to Charles Lindbergh and Babe Ruth in a single paragraph. And here he is in the 1929 yearbook, still being compared to Babe Ruth. In a past Arlington magazine, Matt Blitz wrote a fantastic piece on African Americans and baseball in the Arlington area. Some of what he mentioned, and I quote, starting in about 1910 and continuing just past World War II, Black baseball clubs like the Old Virginia Blues, Green Valley Black Sox, Virginia White Sox, shown here, Arlington Athletics, and Green Valley Quick Steps were big draws and a popular summer pastime for the county's Black community. They competed against each other and with teams from across the region, including rivals from Georgetown, Anacostia, and Annapolis. Then there's this guy, my dad, in 1939, outside his North Adams Street home near the Arlington Courthouse. This would have been the time I would show a 2-minute film of him playing catch with his brothers on the same day, but the Zoom coordination won't allow for it. Trust me, it's good. At the end, they walk over to the camera and they pull balls out of their mitts and take bites out of them. Turns out they were playing catch with apples. Also in 1939, 2 more great athletes were playing sports for W&L. Vince Kirshner and Forrest Tucker. That's Tucker in the back row, far left, and Kirshner back row right, next to the football coach, Pop Deming. Both boys were good baseball players too. The older members in the audience might recall Forrest Tucker, shown here in the 1960s TV comedy series F Troop. As for Kirshner, he stayed in Arlington and became a hometown hero. He's seated 4th from the left in this fantastic 1941 W&L team photo. And yes, that's Frank Upman's design school in the background. Vince Kirshner was signed to play pro ball with the Cardinals, but as Mrs. Kirshner told it, there was much too much travel and not a lot of money in baseball. Her children later blamed her for their dad not being a major leaguer. A big thank you to the Kirshner family for letting me scan Vince's scrapbook. In 1944, Arlington County purchased property to construct Jenny Dean Park. Again, quoting Arlington Magazine, home field was often Green Valley Ballpark, located south of 4 Mile Run, now part of Jenny Dean Park. Games were also played at a field nearby, near Highview Park, on land that's now part of the Virginia Hospital Center. Later organized by Ernest Johnson, the director of Negro Recreation for the Arlington Department of Parks and Recreation, youth games were played throughout the 1950s and into the 1960s at the newly christened Jenny Dean Park, named after a former enslaved woman who had founded one of the only secondary schools in Northern Virginia for African Americans in 1960. In 1961, Arlington Public Schools integrated its athletic programs and with them all county sports. This allowed Black and white sluggers to play ball together. End quote. One of my favorite Arlington baseball finds was being introduced to the late Richard Biff Johnson, a former W&L athlete and local baseball coach. He's seen here taking a swing on the W&L field at Quincy Street. Biff allowed me to scan his scrapbook before he passed away, and here was his 1949 state championship team at W&L. I love this photo. Biff is on the far left, and the guy second from the right has an interesting story. His name is, oh, we have some Jeff. His name is Clink Prince, a longtime member of, you guessed it, Washington Golf, next door. And years ago, he and fellow member John DeLuca came up with a betting formula on the golf course, which is still used today. It's known as the clink, the combination of the members' names. In 1951, baseball appears to have caught on with the smaller kids in Arlington. As this article mentions, pro players stationed at Fort Myer were scheduled to hold a baseball clinic at Fort Myer Run Playground. Finally, in 1952, there is official organized Little League Baseball in Arlington County. According to this article, gala festivities were being planned and the legendary Little League officials' names of Jim Bowman and Chuck Walker are first mentioned. It's been shared with me by my friend Tony, he's here tonight, that Vic Gaza is the most credited man with promoting semi-pro baseball all the way down to Little League in the DC area. He seemed to have his hand in every baseball league, and he was the first president of the Better Sports Club of Arlington. His granddaughter was going to be here tonight, but she fell ill. 4 Mile Run Playfield, as it was called in 1952, would later be known simply as Barcroft Park. This is another great photo from Biff's scrapbook. Per a Charlie Clark article for the Historical Society, Carl Stotts of the National Little League organization was invited to Arlington in 1951 to explain the rules of Little League baseball, and parents and officials embraced the idea. Arlington Little League was born. Bringing the Historical Society into the presentation, this grist mill on 4 Mile Run was purchased in 1880 by Dr. John Barcroft from New Jersey, and that's how the park took its name. In 1953, Biff had become a coach and is standing in the center of the back row. I chose to include this fun team photo from his collection because of the little guy in the first row, third from the left. He grew up to be the guy on the left, everyone's favorite W&L football coach, Bob Rimmer. Everything about this photo is super, and it was taken 70 years ago. The catcher with the ball barely in his mitt and the look on the umpire's face are priceless. I love the ump's open collared shirt. Even the fans watching a play at the plate. The old dugout and the on-deck batter wearing his sponsor's Kenyon Peck Chevrolet jersey. More about them later. In the early 1950s, there seemed to be 3 popular organized baseball locations in the county. Jenny Dean Park and Barcroft Park, South Arlington, and Greenbrier Street Field in North Arlington, shown here. This is a shot of Biff's men's league team. The White Sox, clearly a popular name. I believe that is Floyd Tuthill standing at the far left, who went on to be a scout for the San Diego Padres. He was a legendary Arlington coach in American Legion Baseball and the Men's Unlimited League. Men's leagues were very popular right up through the 1940s and 1950s. If you've ever been to one of my presentations, you know I like props. This is an old men's league jersey that was owned by Vince Kirshner. That was used in the 1940s.
That's a Yateman's on the back of it?
Yes.
Yateman's hardware?
Yes. Opened in 1938.
Gary Yateman here tonight?
I haven't seen it. Because I like to see before and after photos, a few years back, I took this photo of the Yorktown High School stands at the football field. This is about where Biff's team was just seated in the previous photo, and where so many fans used to sit on the hill and enjoy baseball. This is a classic Little League team photo taken in 1954. Check out the proud bat boy in the front row, far right, and the injured little guy far left with 4 fingers outside of his glove. And the catchers, always thrilled to put on their equipment for any reason. When I interviewed Biff on the phone to learn about his scrapbook items, he was especially proud of this picture. He told the story of the tall kid in the back row who had recently moved into the county and lived in the Arlington Forest neighborhood. He was looking to join a team, so Biff gave him a tryout and learned the boy could throw fastballs like no one else, but he wasn't quite sure where they were going. This is who that tall kid grew up to be. NFL Hall of Fame linebacker Chris Hamburger of the Washington Redskins. He was the NFC Defensive MVP in 1972, the season the Redskins lost to the Miami Dolphins in the Super Bowl. Interestingly, the Super Bowl MVP in that game was Jake Scott, who played football at W&L. Jake is being inducted into the Arlington Sports Hall of Fame this fall, and you're all invited. Please visit the website. This is the oldest Little League brochure that I have. Not sure you can see the small font here, but there's some great old names of sponsors and club managers. And the Optimist Club was in the midst of a Little League dynasty by then and featured some of Arlington's best talent, including Jimmy Bear, whom the other teams were afraid to play against because of his size. We'll get to sponsors later in the presentation. I love the old phone numbers. KE stood for Kenmore, and I guess meant your number started with 53. Jackson JA was 52. Maybe TE was for Templeman, I believe, was 83, and Jefferson JA was also 53. I have no idea what OT stood for. There you go. There is Vic Gaza on the advisory committee. Another scrapbook owner who let me scan his was Hank Gordon. This is a fantastic 1956 picture of Hank taking a Little League swing. I especially like that someone wrote power on the photo. Hank went on to be a power hitter at Wakefield High School and then Virginia Tech. Here's his team photo at the time near Fairlington Apartments. This was the Old Dominion Kiwanis. Also from Hank's scrapbook is this beauty. MT Broyhill was a big sponsor back in the day, and old man Broyhill built a beautiful home just down the 26th Street from where we are. At one time, someone proposed the government purchase it and make it an official residence of the vice president. It's been in the news recently because it was bought and just torn down. This article made it in the presentation just yesterday. I was emailing with Henry Kerfoot, a local golfing legend, also in the Sports Hall of Fame, and who went to W&L. And he asked if his classmate of 1952, Eddie DeSimon, was going to be included tonight. My answer was no. But then I stumbled on Lefty DeSimon's name, mentioned in this article, lower right, as making it into the minor leagues. So here you go, Henry. You can't make this up. The earliest McQuinn's team photo is this one from 1956 and was shared with me by my friend Tony DeToto. Tony's here tonight. That's him in the back row center. Still looks the same. He should probably be giving this presentation. Coincidentally, he's known Vic Gaza's family a long time. McQuinn's was named after George McQuinn, the W&L great, who came back to Arlington after playing pro ball and opened up a sports store. Prop time. The rival sports store in North Arlington was Sampson's Sporting Goods on Wilson Boulevard. And that's where I got my first glove. I can still see where my mom wrote my name and the phone number. Jackson 46922. Old Jackson. This is a 1958 junior major program. That was the next level up from Little League. Once again, great sponsors, and we see Tops Drive-In for the first time. We also see WARL as a sponsor, and I believe that was an old radio station, which later became WAVA. Wally Ryland is listed as the coach of McQuinn's, and guess where he's a golfing member? Next door. Another McQuinn's team photo, this one from 1958, has maybe the greatest father-son baseball combination in county history. In the back row, far right, is Vince Kirshner, who was mentioned earlier. And his son Bernie is seated far left, front row. Here's Bernie at West Virginia University. He grew up to be arguably the greatest athlete in Yorktown High School history. Both Bernie and Vince are in the Arlington Sports Hall of Fame. This Stuart Buick team photo includes three memorable faces. The first is the legendary Little League coach Burt Whittington, who is seated in the center near the back. The second is Bill Murray in the first row, second from left. And the third is Clay Kirby in the front row, third from right. '65, I believe. No, it had to be, it was in the 50s, 59, maybe. Trying to make these guys younger. This is Bill Murray today, our county's commissioner of accounts, and he's still playing baseball. Not for McQuinn's or Stuart Buick. Bill has donated much of his adult life to Arlington sports programs, and he's also in the Arlington County Sports Hall of Fame. And here is Clay Kirby in 1971, who grew up to be one of the best baseball pitchers who ever played in Arlington and is also in the Hall of Fame. More about him later. The man who coached Bill Murray, Clay Kirby, and many others in high school was Del Norwood. He coached varsity baseball at W&L from 1959 to 1987 and won 14 regional titles. He played pro ball in the minor leagues, as did his son Steve and his grandson Brett. He had another son, Scott, who was the place kicker for the Buffalo Bills. Before retiring from the NFL, Scott passed John Leipold as the leading kick scorer in Bills history. Coincidentally, Mr. Norwood taught John Leipold at W&L. We're all tied in here. Washington Lee is by far the oldest high school in the county and with the most stories. But there have been plenty of baseball greats at the other three high schools. The story of the Terwilliger brothers at Wakefield is a good one. And in the 1960s, Ron, the oldest, was a star in baseball and basketball and went on to excel in both sports at the Naval Academy. What did his younger brother Bruce do? The exact same thing. Giving back to Arlington County, Ron Terwilliger was a large donor and headed up a group to recently build an affordable housing apartment focused on veterans focused on veterans on Washington Boulevard in Arlington. The building is named after his parents. This is from a 1961 Better Sports Club program. And it was given to me so I could scan it by the Honorable George Varoutzis, a retired Arlington County judge who sits with me on the Arlington Sports Hall of Fame board. Featured on the cover is George McQuinn, being presented a trophy in 1957 as the very first inductee into the Arlington Sports Hall of Fame. It's interesting that the presenter was the director of baseball of Hall of Fame, director of Baseball Hall of Fame, Cooperstown. Inside the program is a who's who of sports greats who appeared at the Better Sports Club banquets in the early years. Pauline Betts was the greatest female tennis player in the world in the 1940s and was a member at Washington Golf next door. Stan Tinkham coached the women's record-setting Olympic swim team, and he coached the swim team next door. Other names include Dick Grote of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Calvin Griffith, president of the Washington Senators, Dean Beeman, who later became commissioner of the PGA Tour, and even boxing great Rocky Marciano made an appearance in 1954. This priceless photo was provided by local writer Charlie Clark here tonight and was taken in 1962. Number 12 is Charlie's older brother, Tom, seated on the bench at a B team game at Bluemont Park. Tom looks to be hiding from the coach that he's blowing a bubble with his chewing gum. The house I grew up in is one in the upper left behind Ashland School. This is the 1963 Better Sports Club program. This one I added because I thought it was nice that my Arlington history researching idol, the late Eleanor Lee Templeman, presented the Girls Pigtail League Sportsmanship Award. The young lady who played for the Old Dominion Bank, and I work for the new Old Dominion National Bank. I have to give a plug here for my company. If anyone wants to make a deposit tonight. You're welcome. Take a lap. The trophy was sponsored by Columbia Garden Cemetery in Arlington, coincidentally, where I'll be buried one day. This motley crew consists of my cousins and two brothers standing with gloves at the old Thomas home on North Jefferson Street. The cousins own Columbia Garden Cemetery, and the brothers are both here tonight. We've reached 1964, and this is the earliest Little League All-Star photo that I have. More on the All-Stars later. 1964 was a big year for Barcroft because, as mentioned in this old article, the Little League field received new brick dugouts with steps and plans to screen the dugouts. Voila. Somehow I knew you wanted to see a photo of the new dugouts. This was taken by my mom with my brother Billy seated in the distance, Coach Buck Good in sunglasses. Here's a fun one, a 1965 All-Star team photo. This was sent to me by longtime Arlington mortgage banker Tom Donahoe. He's seated in the second row, far left. He's also seated here tonight. The second boy to the right of Tom in the EO hat is our favorite local writer, Charlie Clark, also here tonight. Also in this photo, seated in the back players row, third from left, is another pitcher who is considered one of the greatest from Arlington, He doesn't look so tough there.
What's his name?
Here he is, grown up, and his name was Jay Franklin. Like Clay Kirby, he also went on to pitch for the San Diego Padres. More on him later. Arlington Little League statistics were an art form, and we had Chuck Walker to thank for it. As Charlie Clark pointed out in an article years ago, we also have Mrs. Juggy Ward to thank. She was a dedicated mom, coach's wife, and Little League scorekeeper. Her husband, Juggy, was my coach for Arlington Trust in 1971. More on that later. O'Connell High School had one of the greatest baseball coaches in county history. His name was Al Birch, and he accomplished way more than we have time to mention. In 1963, he became the varsity baseball coach, and that team won 42 consecutive games during the 1963 and 63 to 65 seasons. A record feat that was recognized in 1965 by the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. It should be noted that another Kirshner, Vince's son Joe, played for O'Connell during that time. You can read more about Coach Birch on the Arlington Sports Hall of Fame website. But all good things must come to an end. And the guy who ended O'Connell's famous streak at 42 was this guy, WNL pitcher Clay Kirby. He went on to have a decent career in Major League Baseball, but at O'Connell, he'll forever be remembered as the pitcher who shut down the streak. Tough to read, but 1966 was another big year for Little League because the rule was changed from coaches recruiting players to players having to play for the team in their designated district. This fun 1966 All-Star photo includes outgoing Historical Society President Kathy Bonneville Hicks's father, Chuck. He's the tallest coach in the back row right. Everyone loved Coach Bonneville. The picture also includes Arlington food celebrity Bobby Tremonti, kneeling at the far left. Bobby's here tonight. Bobby grew up to be this guy, proprietor of the Italian stores in Arlington. Free subs for everyone who stays.
All right. Tonight only.
Continuing with the Little League All-Star theme, this 1967 photo includes my oldest brother, Harry, the tallest kid in the players' row in the back. What makes this photo extra fun is that the tall blonde kid next to my brother grew up to be Stanley McChrystal. Rolling Stone magazine readers may recall a 2010 profile of General McChrystal, in which the four-star general and commander of U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan openly disparaged Obama administration officials, including, most notably, then Vice President Joe Biden. The article got McChrystal fired, but he was a good little leaguer. Boom. And just like that, the same group in color. We're at the point in the presentation where it was like Dorothy first walked out in black and white from her tornado-thrown house into Munchkinville land, or Munchkin land in Technicolor. This is another photo taken by my mom. In this 1968 photo are two of Arlington's better baseball players of all time. They are my oldest brother, Harry, on the right, speaking with Jimmy Barb, whose back is to the camera. They were record setters all the way through college, and Jimmy into minor league baseball. The two teamed up to play for Del Norwood on WNL's 1972 baseball team that almost won the state title. Here is Harry and Jimmy 50 years later as recent inductees into the Arlington Sports Hall of Fame. Jimmy texted me just before the show, and he's watching us on Zoom. One of my favorite Little League sponsors was Tops Drive-In. Here's my cousin Rex on the left and my brother Richard on the right at Barcroft. I believe they're separated by Fidelity coach Mr. Coburn in 1968. That same year, Tops won the championship. Moms tend to describe it all in one photo. The writing says it all. Great uniforms. So bear with me while I share some items from my own scrapbook. So 1969 was a big year to be a kid in Arlington. Living next door to DC, I was 9 years old. The famous pro basketball Hall of Famer Rick Barry played in the old ABA for a short time, and in 1969, his team moved to Washington. Vince Lombardi was named head coach of the Redskins, and the great Ted Williams, manager of the Senators. If that wasn't exciting enough, the Major League Baseball All-Star game was played at old RFK Stadium, and many kids from Arlington attended the game. Yes, I still have my program from that game. And my ticket stub. I mentioned Juggy Ward, who managed my brother Bill and me with Arlington Trust, and we won the league championship in 1971. Clearly, my mom wanted everyone to speed read the articles and get to the underlined parts about us. Also in 1971, I was invited by an Arlington neighbor to take my first flight, which was to Pittsburgh, to see my hero, Roberto Clemente, play baseball in person. This is how we boarded a flight at National Airport back then. Here is a nice close-up of Clemente in right field using Jack's Instamatic camera. But this was the big moment, a photo of me getting Clemente's autograph. And here it is. Recently, the Clemente Museum reached out and asked if I'd loan the autograph, photo, and my ticket stub from that September 1st, 1971 game, because it became the very first Major League Baseball game played with an all-black starting lineup. Just by chance, I was there to save my stuff. An Arlington history presentation wouldn't be complete without mention of the Syfaxes, a family who's been in Arlington for a long time. I stole this Little League team photo of Red Shield, which was connected to the Salvation Army. I didn't know that. Off of Facebook, because I believe that is Doug Syfax in the first row, second from left. Doug played with my older brother Bill at WNL, and he posted this, and he's here tonight. The 1971 Better Sports Club program. Two Arlington stars giving back, Clay Kirby, Top, and Jay Franklin Wright were celebrities in attendance that year. Charlie Clark shared with me that as kids, these two pitchers lived next door to each other in Arlington. This is one of my favorite Arlington team photos, a 1972 Little League All-Star team. As we've seen earlier this evening, past Little League All-Stars all wore the same t-shirts in photos. But someone was thinking with this one and had us wear our own uniforms. The colors are fantastic. I'm standing in the back, third from the left, in my Arlington Trust uniform. I'm still good friends with Lane Gibson, Tom Terrell, Chuck Dodson, Willie Payne, and Danny Petotsky, who is in the front row, third from left. Danny was a longtime baseball coach at Washington Lee High School. I told them all I was going to give them a shout out tonight. Check out the short coach in the back row near the center wearing the Better Homes hat.
That's Sam?
That's Coach Sam Fox,
Yeah.
and he's another Barcroft legend. Nearly 50 years later, I ran into Coach Fox. Where else? At Barcroft Park. And he's wearing an Arlington Little League shirt. Fantastic. From the Northern Virginia Sun, these are the league stats from 1952 to 1972. And Chuck Walker is recognized. Like coming into church tonight, my wife reminded me to silence my phone. This is our 1972 Arlington Trust team following the championship season. I'm in the back row, second right, and it's time for another prop. Not sure the millions watching on Zoom can see this.
Get it on.
This arm,
Boxing Day call. Just standing in the center.
Steve Johnson. Yep,
Healing first row left, Tony Cannon.
Tony Cannon. There. Doug, you should be doing this.
Help you out.
Big stage.
You're the star of the show.
Yeah, now you're still talking, aren't you?
Yeah.
There's another surprise for you. Doug Syfax. This is a classic he posted after the death of Major League Baseball pitching great Vida Blue. Doug had fun comparing himself to Blue in this post. Doug's a big proponent of the Historical Society, so thank you.
Well,
I think they think I queued you up for that. Moving on to Arlington and the major leagues. Some of you may recall that we almost had Major League Baseball played in Arlington. Retired Arlington Judge George Ferrutzis, here tonight, shared these pages from when he was chairman of the advisory committee pushing for a major league team in our county. And while we didn't get our team, we have quite a few local players to be proud of. The website ainsworthsports.com ranked hundreds of the greatest baseball players of all time from Arlington high schools. And here's the top 20, not Arlington, sorry, Virginia high schools. So if you can read that, it's tough to read. Had to increase the size. These were all Virginia high school players, and this is just the top 20. There's Eppa Rixey at number 2, and our George McQuinn at 7, and Clay Kirby at 18.
is that the same Ryan Zimmerman that played for the Nats?
Yes, it is. Yeah, he was from Virginia Beach. So now I'll run through the baseball cards of some locals that I found. As mentioned earlier, Rixey didn't live in Arlington, but since his uncle owned the land we're on tonight, that counts for something. Rixey was born in Culpeper, Virginia, and played baseball and basketball at the University of Virginia. This card's from 1922, by the way. He was a very good pitcher for Philadelphia in the big leagues until he left for World War I. After his return, he was traded to Cincinnati and went on to have a Hall of Fame career. He retired with 266 wins, which stood as the National League record for left-handed pitchers until Warren Spahn topped it in 1959. Rixey was elected to the Hall of Fame on January 27th, 1963, and died a month later. George McQuinn, our Washington League graduate in the late 1920s, was one of the most decorated Major League Baseball players to come out of Arlington. Also, as mentioned, he went on to play an important role as a store owner and team sponsor in the county after hanging up his spikes. McQuinn was a six-time American League All-Star. Born in Arlington in 1935, just before we had Arlington Hospital, for those keeping score, Bill Daly pitched in only one full Major League Baseball season. As a reliever that year, he appeared in 66 games with a 6-3 record, 1.99 earned run average, and 21 saves. Statistics that would land him a contract worth millions today. Unfortunately, a rotator cuff injury the following season ended Bill's career. According to an old Sports Illustrated article in the summer of 1963, the Minnesota Twins were the talk of Major League Baseball, and Bill Daly became a superhero in the Twin Cities. The article went on to read that when the Twins got in trouble, Bill was brought in from the bullpen by a convertible, knelt down, and made the sign of the cross in the dirt with his index finger, all to the tune of, "Bill Bailey, won't you please come home?" I don't believe Fred Talbot was an Arlingtonian. He was born in DC and pitched at Fairfax and McLean high schools. He did play on Arlington traveling all-star teams in the 50s. But my friend Tony shared a story with me that Talbot and Whitey Edwards had one of the all-time Arlington County fistfights at Mario's Pizza one night. So he seemed to earn his way on my list. Talbot was the butt of many jokes in the popular baseball book Ball 4 by Jim Bouton. Apparently, there was a lot of bad blood between the two pitchers who played just a short time together for the old Seattle Pilots. As we learned tonight, Clay Kirby played Arlington Little League up through Washington Lee High School. I read somewhere that he is the poster child for great players drafted by lousy franchises who end up in professional mediocrity. The San Diego Padres took Kirby in the 1968 Major League expansion draft, and moved him to the big leagues for the 1970 season. In 1971, he was throwing a no-hitter through 8 innings when his manager, Preston Gomez, famously shocked San Diego fans by lifting Kirby for a pinch hitter. The incident became known as the Curse of Kirby and was recounted every time a Padres pitcher threatened to throw a no-hitter. In Kirby's very next year, he retired, in Kirby's very next start, he retired the first 21 batters he faced. Then Willie McCovey hit a home run. It was the only hit Kirby gave up, but the lowly Padres lost the game 2-1. Next is Jay Franklin, the Arlington Little Leaguer who played at James Madison High School and was the second overall player taken in the 1971 draft. I've always wondered if Franklin had a baseball card until I found a website that actually read, quote, here's a not really missing, quote, unquote, card. Here's a not really missing card for a 3-game major league career pitcher. The back of the card was not shown. Sadly, Franklin flamed out after 3 Major League Baseball appearances due to a worn-out arm. According to an article written by Thomas Ayers for the Society for American Baseball Research, while growing up in Arlington, Dave Leonard's mother, Marion, was a civilian clerk for the Naval Department, and his father, Paul, worked for the Social Security Administration. The article went on to read, Leonard was a high school teacher when by chance he met a scout for the Baltimore Orioles who convinced him to spend his summer pitching in the minor leagues. Early in his major league career, Leonard moonlighted as a National Guardsman, and his Maryland Air National Guard unit was called in to keep peace after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Here's a minor league card for Jimmy Barr. As mentioned earlier, he played Arlington Little League, where he once batted .703, a then record, and hit 9 home runs.
Wow.
As a pitcher, he threw 61 innings and recorded 154 strikeouts.
Wow.
Let that sink in. Jimmy played at Wakefield High School, then transferred to W&L. He played at James Madison University and was an All-America selection in 1975. If you can read it, just look at the back of this card where he led the league in the minor leagues in runs, hits, home runs, and RBIs in 1978. Rich Savauer didn't accomplish greatness in professional baseball, but I just had to purchase and add this card to my collection. Turns out this isn't Rich in the photo. Sometimes card makers just get it wrong. But hey, the card maker got half the card right, the stats on the back. This is the real Rich Savauer. Born in Arlington, Rich later played for Falls Church High School, then Manatee Junior College. Major League card has not been located yet. Currently, he's a pitching coach in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. Born in Arlington in 1964, Bobby Witt was a first-round Major League Baseball pick, selected 3rd by the Texas Rangers in 1985. In the following season, he was pitching in the majors. He once struck out 4 batters in 1 inning. He wasn't known for his control on the mound, but as of today, he ranks among the top 100 all-time strikeout leaders for pitchers in Major League Baseball. I'll bet my oldest brother's looking that up on his phone right now. Born in Arlington in 1972, Mike Holtz was a middle inning reliever in Major League Baseball and appeared in 353 games in 9 years. Holtz landed in the major leagues with the California Angels when he was 23 years old. I believe he's the only Arlingtonian to also play professional baseball in the Japanese Central League. So he has that going for him. So wrapping up tonight with a mention of some of our past Arlington team sponsors. This will give you an idea how important it is to become a sponsor in Arlington when asked. You'll be remembered forever. Per an old Charlie Clark article for the Historical Society, some of the original Little League sponsors were the Optimist Club, St. Mary's Episcopal Church, Arlington Kiwanis, and Brumback Plumbing. Once again, I borrowed from the Historical Society and stole a few from Facebook. Probably the oldest Arlington company to sponsor a baseball team was Arlington Trust. This picture shows the bank in Roslyn in 1914. An interesting note, my great-grandfather was a longtime chairman of the bank, but he was gone before he saw our championship trophy. Staying in Roslyn, I don't have any old building photos, but early sponsor Stuart Buick sat at this location in 1953, shown in the center of the map. I just love old Arlington plat books. I have a 1935 and a 1953. Another oldie that used to be located in Clarendon on Wilson Boulevard was Kenyon Peck Chevrolet. Bob Peck went on to own his own dealership, which was located at the corner of Wilson Boulevard and Glebe Road. It's where the new Diamond Building stands. Mr. Peck was very active in youth sports. Another of my before and after photos. This is what the Kenyon Peck dealership is today. Clarendon Trust was also a popular team sponsor. Thank you to Steve Palmeter, who posted this great photo on Facebook. As you can see, this bank sat in the heart of Arlington, of Clarendon Circle. At the far left center of the photo is the building that houses Liberty Tavern Restaurant. Far left center. For our Arlington historians out there, what many people don't know is that this was the location of the old trolley station in Clarendon. Some people incorrectly think the current Northside Social Restaurant building was the station. But this 1974 newspaper tells the story. I'm not sure how old Clarendon Trust was, but it was shown in 1935 in on my plat book. Back in the day, while in Clarendon, you could visit the sporting goods stores, and this one was opened by George McQuinn after he retired from baseball. Here I go again with my before and after photo. I believe this is now a burger place. Tops Drive-In probably won the prize for the most fun and sponsor. And as you can see in the middle, had locations around the Washington area. Here is their menu if anyone's getting hungry. That sirloiner was the best. Another side note, Jim Matthews owned Tops and merged with Kentucky Fried Chicken. But that's for when I present the history of restaurants in Arlington. And this is a photo of the Tops on North George Mason Drive and Lee Highway. Thank you to Quentin Porter for posting on Facebook. Today, it's the location of a Capital One bank branch to the right, but I'm not sure of the Tops Cleaners next door. Had to be related. Another food favorite team sponsor was always Mario's Pizza, and it's still in business. Former players have told me they used to get free pizza after their games. I guess I played for the wrong team back then. When the baseball seasons ended, that's when Dan Kane Trophies stepped up to the plate and created our trophies. The store was located in Clarendon. That building was previously housed an appliance store. And today it's home to Lion Hall Restaurant. And that concludes the history of baseball in Arlington.
Well done, Jonathan.
Who are these four guys?
Repeat the question.
I was just asked who these four players are, but I have no idea. I wasn't alive. They were from Biff Johnson's scrapbook. I think they played for him, I'm sure, because he coached the Mates. If you have any questions, Doug Syfax is here tonight and can answer your questions.
It was definitely a trip down memory lane. I'm getting a lot of comments and I'm not getting questions in chat, but I'm getting comments like loving the presentation. Memories are great.
He stutters. Charlie, question.
Excellent talk, excellent research. Can you say a word about the moms and dads who had to drive?
Well, I can say a word about our mother. One summer, there were four of us playing, four of us played baseball. And one summer she kept track and she went to 87 baseball games in one summer. You know, that included all-star games and tournaments.
Did I see another hand? Yes, sir.
Question about, as I understand it, it was Arlington Little League up until like the mid-80s, and then Arlington Babe Ruth came on. What was kind of that?
Repeat the question.
Jonathan, can you repeat that question for the people in this on Zoom?
I'm being asked a question that I can't answer because I'm not going to consider that history. I don't know what happened with Arlington and the Babe Ruth League.
Tell you what happened. The league has very strict rules about who can play with them. Babe Ruth, the league rules are very vital. Dr. Bob, of course, has been tired of the tightness of the Little League rules and started Cal Ripken League. That must have been 25, 30 years ago. They basically did whoever they wanted.
So the answer to what happened with Arlington Little League versus Babe Ruth is that the coaches, Bob Bonacorso, we all remember him, got tired of the rules that Arlington made them play by and decided to start, at that time, I guess, the Cal Ripken League. And eventually, now I believe the Babe Ruth League is the most popular. And that's,
You know, Cal
there you go.
Jonathan, I have a question from the Zoom. Somebody on Zoom wanted to know when the teams, when did the local Little League teams integrate? I know you mentioned the high school and when it was in the schools, but do you know when the teams that were the local baseball teams, you know when they started integrating their teams?
Well, according to what in my presentation, the law was changed in Arlington in 1961.
Okay.
So any county supervised sports leagues had to integrate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.